Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my 5th update for my 2022 Pan Those Eyeshadows Project Pan. If you're not familiar with this project, it is an eyeshadow-centric project pan where I randomize eyeshadows for my collection with the goal to hit pan on them. I do have various rules for this project, and many other people on this platform on YouTube as well as over on Instagram participate in this project in their own different ways. It was created by my friend Alexi, but it has morphed and become kind of whatever anyone needs out of eyeshadow panning, and it's just so much fun. Now today is my 5th update, and I did start this project at the beginning of January, so this month should be my 6th update, but I did have to skip my last one, so my June update did not exist because I was kind of a little bit wonky with my schedule leading up to that update anyways. Life is a little bit wild sometimes, and so I didn't have an opportunity to film when I was supposed to in May. So that update had come very late, and then by the time the June update was supposed to roll around, I just wasn't feeling like I had made any kind of notable progress. It had been like 2.5 weeks. Last update was an absolutely thrilling update. It was an amazing update, if I do say so myself, because I had rolled 5 of my 6 focus eyeshadows out of this project. So I was basically resetting the project. So that's why the amount of progress was just absolutely minimal. But I have to tell you now, I have made some really great progress now that I've had about, I don't know, 6 weeks or so since my last update, and I am so excited to share with you the progress that I have made over these past several weeks. Before we get into it though, I do want to talk about my pan percentage. It is something that I rarely discuss in this project because for me, it's not really about figuring out my pan percentage. That's not really like the ultimate goal in this project. I don't have a set percentage that I want to see in my collection by the end of this year, nothing like that. It is fun though to talk stats every once in a while, so I wanted to share that with you. I currently have a grand total of 303 eyeshadows in my collection. And out of those 303 eyeshadows, 66 of my eyeshadows have pan on them, which is wild. I'm actually really surprised by that number. That's very large in my opinion, but I have been working on my Pan Those eyeshadows for many years. 66 pans within those 303 eyeshadows, which if I did my math correctly, that means that I have a total of 21.78 pan percentage, and that feels really good. I would like eventually to get this number higher, but as I said, it's not an imperative metric for me. I don't think that it is something that I'm ever striving to achieve any kind of specific number. It's just nice to see that that number has been increasing over the last few years for me, and that what I'm bringing into my collection I am getting pan on, and that I'm minimizing what is coming into my collection in order to hit more pans on older eyeshadow palettes as well. With all of those freaking rambles aside, let's get on into the actual progress that I've made so you can visually see where I'm at, and we can chat about all 6 of these focus shadows that I had been working on. So as I said, I had basically refreshed the project last update. The shade here at the top is one that I've had in for 2 updates, and then the other 5 came in just last update. And I do really feel like this color story was really pretty, a lot of fun to play with. I had a good mixture of metallics, although they were all leaning on the green side. I did have a really good mixture of different types of metallics and some really good basic mattes to play around with a variety of different eye looks. So overall, really happy with how this color story came together and kind of how things paired independently and the opportunities and variety that this did give me as well. So let's hop on into each of the individual shades. As I said, this swatch here at the top is one that I've now had in for 2 updates. I believe I rolled this in update number 3. So at this point, I have been really working on it more like 3 months, even though it's only been 2 updates because of the lapse in time between update 3 and update 4, as well as update 4 and update 5. So I've had this as a focus shadow for quite some time. Last update, I had only reached for it twice since I had rolled it into the project, which was something that I was really disappointed in, but I wanted to remedy that. And so I set myself a goal to reach for it an additional 5 times in the coming month. And I have reached for it 5 times since my last update, which only brings me up to 7 uses in that shadow. I'm pretty sure I haven't even told you what shadow it is. It is from my Fenty Beauty Galaxy palette. This is a very old palette, but the shade was called Extraterrestrial, which is the very first shade in the palette right here. And of course, in 7 uses, I would never anticipate that I did hit pan on it. So there's, you know, maybe a tiny bit of disruptance happening in the pan. I don't know if you can see it there. It's so reflective, this palette, so it's really hard to see, but it's that shade right there. I think you can tell. It has a little bit of disruptance, but nowhere near approaching pan. And although I love greens, and I think at the time when I rolled this in, I was very excited for it because I loved the idea of having a green, this kind of smoky base, this very deep, dark base is just not something that I'm gravitating towards, and the few times that I have reached for it, I've not really enjoyed it. So I have kind of decided to do something a little bit different for me. I've never done something like this, but instead of rolling this palette out, I do want to veto that eyeshadow. But I think what I want to do in place of that is I want to randomize a new focus shadow from this palette. Because this is an older palette, I do think it would be a lot of fun to bring it to the forefront and to focus on it. But this particular shade is just not it for me. So nearing the end of today's video, I will roll in a new focus shade from the Fenty Beauty Galaxy palette. And I think that that's going to be something that works really well for me to possibly integrate Extraterrestrial into looks, but also not feel like it's such an obligation because it's just not happening for me. I've come to realize it's not happening. Why force it? Even though I do have a 15 use threshold, I don't want to force it, you know? So next up, I have this bright pinky coral shade. This comes from my Nabla Soul Blooming palette, and the shade name is called Bolero. It was rolled in just in my last update, so in grand total, I have reached for it already 13 times since I rolled it into this project. Here is what it's looking like today. There is a little bit of disruptance happening in the pan, an evident dip starting to form. However, I am nowhere nearing pan on this one. I really enjoyed this color. I was so thrilled to bring this into the project because it feels very spring summer to me, and right now we're in the middle of summer, and so it just felt like the perfect shadow to use as a transition shade. I could use it all over the lid. It just is perfect for this time of year, as is this the entirety of this palette rather. But actually, in practice, I've been feeling like Bolero is maybe sometimes a little bit too vibrant for my liking. So today I do have it on the inner portion of my lid, and I ended up mixing it with the shade Chamomile beside it. So I feel like I've been making really good progress on both of those shades by mixing them together to kind of tone down the pinkiness of Bolero. I foresee this taking me a couple more months to actually hit pan on. I don't foresee by the next update that I will be able to reach for it like 13 times. It might be more like 8 to 10 uses if I get myself back on a regular schedule with this video series. But overall, really happy to be reaching for this palette as a whole, and I'm really happy with the amount of progress that I have made thus far on Bolero as well. The next focus shade is also a matte. It is this kind of burnt red shade. It comes from my Jkissa to the Rescue palette. Yet again, an old limited edition palette. But this shade is called Pepper, and I did roll it in my last update as well. So only 1 month of progress on it so far. However, I have reached for it 15 times since I introduced it into the project pan. And I do think that that's because I had so much time to reach for it. But in any case, 15 uses is very good for me, and that makes me very, very satisfied to see such a high usage count on it. This is the palette that it comes from, and let me open it up and share with you what it's looking like right here. So this is what Pepper's looking like right now. I think you can tell that there is some wear on it. It's looking very, very much more loved than it had previously. It was one of my least used shades from this palette previous, but now there is some wear, some evidence of use on it, and I think I should be able to hit pan on it in the coming month after another maybe 10 uses. I should have checked my stats on how long it took me to hit pan on Millie, which is also a matte in this palette, but I do use this a little bit differently than I use Millie. I don't wear this as an all over lid shade. Pepper for me can come off kind of patchy, a little inconsistent sometimes. So oftentimes I've been wearing it more so as a deepening kind of shade, or I'll almost use it as like a base underneath of eyeshadows as well. This one I'm being a lot more sparing in my application, and so in those 15 uses, I do feel like I have made some visible progress, but it will take a little bit more effort for sure. I'm pretty happy with that though. And overall, I'm really happy with how this palette is looking. In fact, I was able to hit a bonus pan this last update, or this last time between updates, in the shade Tsuki, which is honestly, I think, my favorite shade in this entire palette. It's a beautiful orange that has almost like a silvery reflect. I am wearing it also in the center of my lid today, and I'm wearing pepper on the outer corner as well as on my lower lash line today for that added definition and depth. And yeah, Tsuki has just been such a treat to reach for, and I'm really happy about that little extra bonus pan as well. So although I haven't hit pan in pepper, this palette is looking much more loved, and I have been really enjoying reaching for it this past few weeks, and I'm surprised by that because this was a palette that oftentimes I found myself a little bit underwhelmed by, but it has been quite fun to reach for. I think it's just very summery and it just feels good. So yeah, next update, it's possible pepper will have pan in it. The next swatch right here is one that I was so thrilled to roll in my last update. I was like over the moon because it was something I was considering rolling in on my own anyways. It is the shade Tea Garden from ColourPop, which is just one of my top tier eyeshadows in my collection, and I've had it for years and I still love it so much. It's that beautiful reddish kind of warm base with a really soft gold green shift to it that just feels grungy, also girly. It's really beautiful, really dynamic, and it's such a superstar eyeshadow in my opinion because it works with so many different types of looks. And I already had really great progress on it rolling it into this project, so that's why I was considering bringing it in on my own, but I was so excited to reach for it and to finally hit pan on it after having had it for years in my collection. And I will say I was able to do so since my last update in this project. It only took me 5 uses in this project to hit, oh my God, whew, she's safe. Take 2, I was able to hit pan on it in 5 uses. I did use it an additional 6th time after having hit pan on it. So 6 uses collectively in this project, and I'm really happy to see that little bit of pan. I foresee myself using this so many more times and expanding that pan just by using it naturally. But I am really happy that after just a handful of uses, I will be rolling it out of this project and rolling something new in its place at the end of today's video. Next up is this gorgeous, vibrant, rich green shade. This is such a beautiful color. This shadow right here is from Juvia's Place. It comes from the Magic Mini palette and it is called Buzo. I still don't know the pronunciation. I'm very sorry for that, but it's B-U-Z-O. And it is a bit more of a challenging kind of color to integrate into many looks. It's not something that I want to reach for on an everyday basis by any means. And I was able to reach for it 5 times since I rolled it into this project, and I feel like that is a very satisfactory number for sure for such a vibrant color, especially when I was working on trying to use 6 different eyeshadows as a focus. I feel like it's always great to see like at least 5 uses on each of my focus shades. So this is the shade Buzo right here. As you can see, I don't have pan, but in fact I do have a little bit of hard pan happening because I did use this as a liner once, and so I was wetting my brush with my Cover FX high performance setting spray, and it did cause a little bit of hard pan there. But overall, it does look like it's very well used so far. I'm really happy to see some evident progress And actually, I think I will use some tape to remove that hard pan before I photo the progress pictures. So in the progress photo, you'll see actually something that doesn't look so chaotic, hopefully. I'll try to fix that up because before I use it for the next time, I won't want to have that hard pan in there. It just makes it so much easier to pick up product if you can just simply remove the hard pan. But yeah, 5 uses I'm really happy with. I know when it comes to Juvia's Place metallics, it takes me quite a lot of time. So I don't imagine this being something I can roll out for my next update unless I'm able to get like 15 to 20 uses in on it. But probably in a couple months time, it'll be a rollout, and I'm gonna enjoy using it until then anyways. And last but most certainly not least is this very light kind of tan brown shade. This shade is actually the one that I hand selected to bring into this project. I always have one focus shadow that I personally choose to have in the project as a focus. And so I selected this one just because the palette that it came from didn't have a ton of use on it. And it's honestly a little bit of an easier shade to focus on so that I could roll it out and pull something else in to increase the number of pans in my overall collection a little bit more quickly. This shade is called Sunset, and it comes from this cute little palette right here. This is the Catrice X Iman eyeshadow palette, the Bronzed AF eyeshadow palette, and I'm really happy I decided to roll it in as a focus shade for these past couple weeks. I ended up reaching into the shade Sunset 13 times, and here is what it's looking like today. I was able to hit pan on it after 12 uses, and collectively I did reach for it 13 times since my last update, and I'm really happy to see that pan. And I was actually able to hit a bonus pan because every time I reached into the shade Sunset, I used Fairfax as kind of my setting shade to set my primer down on my lids. And so I was able to hit a bonus pan in the shade Fairfax as well. So here's what this palette's looking like. It definitely looks a lot better than it had been looking previously. And generally, I'm pretty sure I used every single shadow in this palette a handful of times, minus the black shade, since my last update, and that feels really great to have done that because this was one that I hadn't reached for in a little bit of time. So feels really good to see some progress and some changes happening on this palette, but I will be rolling the shade Sunset out of this project, which means that I will be selecting my own focus shadow as well to kind of switch up this color story. So why don't we hop on into all of the new roll-ins. They're all gonna be kind of coming in different ways, but let's get on into that. So these are the 3 shades that will be remaining in the project. 3 of the focus shades are rolling out from today. So I have the shade Bolero from the Nabla Soul Blooming. I have Pepper from the Jkissa to the Rescue palette, and Buzo from the Juvia's Place The Magic Mini palette. And so we're gonna roll 3 new eyeshadows into this project. As I said, I'm doing these 3 all different ways. I will be rolling out the shade Extraterrestrial, as I said, but I really want to focus on this palette still. It felt really good to have rolled this into this palette, or into this project rather. And so I want to work on something else. So I want to actually randomize something specifically from this palette right here as a focus shade to replace the shade Extraterrestrial. So I am going to roll from shades 1 to 10 because I'm omitting this one right here, which is Extraterrestrial. I'm omitting the other 3 that do have pan on them, and I'm just going to make the 10 that remain in this palette as shades that are eligible to be added to the new color story. Sounds a little convoluted, but that's what I want to do. I really want to keep this palette as a focus. I may end up getting something that's a little bit more challenging, but I think it will encourage me to reach for this palette more if I have something that I'm more inclined to want to reach for. I'm in this mood where I'm not gonna force myself to pan something that just isn't working for me. It's obviously a sign that it's not gonna happen. So why should I force it? I wanna bypass that kind of feeling of needing to pan something or the obligation to pan something. So I am just going to make some fun out of this and just choose something else to focus on and see if I'm more inclined to reach for that instead. Alrighty, so here is the Pretty Random app with shades number 1 to 10 as eligible roll-in. So let's roll something in. I don't think you'll see this color but that is shade number 3. So I'm gonna go through the rows and count out the 3rd shade. So this one is number 1. We're gonna skip this one. So 2 and then 3. So 3 is this kind of also a smoky base purple instead. This is the shade Ultraviolet. And it looks, oh, it looks very pretty, but it is definitely not what I was expecting actually at all. It looks very deep on the finger swatch, but as I swatch it on my hands, it's almost like that smokiness doesn't transfer, and it's just the pinky purpley kind of glitters. Actually, I think that's really pretty. It's not at all how it looks there. And for reference, here is what it's looking like right now. It does have a little bit of kind of texture in the pan. It does look like it has hit some hard pan. So yeah, that's what we're starting with. No evident dip at all in it. But yeah, I'm actually really excited to see how this performs on the eyes and what kind of looks I can come up with integrating it. And to replace Tea Garden, I have now pulled up the Tiny Decisions app because I have all of my eligible eyeshadows in this wheel right here. So let's pull something randomly to focus on in place of Tea Garden. And I got a shade from my Oma Beauty Black Magic Allure palette, the shade Allure. So I'm gonna get that palette. I really don't remember which shade that is. I have an inkling that it's like a green gold kind of shade, but I'll be right back. So here we have that gorgeous palette. I'm really excited to be rolling this in, and I haven't peeked at it. So let's take a look together at what the shade Allure is. And I'm correct. It is like a greeny gold, like shifty sort of shade. So it's comparable to Tea Garden. It's comparable to the shade that I had previously been working on in my Natasha Denona palette. So this type of tone, this type of duochrome shade has become a staple in this project pan. This is a little bit different in the sense that it is more of a glitter versus a metallic, but it's so funny that I keep getting this kind of tone, this sort of, they're very reminiscent of one another. So it's like a light green gold. This one doesn't have quite as much of a base pigment to it, but it is extremely similar to the shades that I focused on in my last 2 updates. How bizarre is that? Oh my goodness. Well, there you go. I am going to absolutely love using it, and I'm very familiar with how to reach for these kinds of shades. I think it's gonna work really well with the shade Pepper as a base. And yeah, that's so funny. So funny, but I'm really excited to reach into not only that shade, but this palette collectively. Here's what Allure is looking like right now. No evident dip per se, but there is a little bit of usage. Like you can tell I dipped my finger into there a handful of times, but nothing too obvious. These shades take quite a lot of time to hit pan on in terms of this more like satin metallic kind of texture and the mattes. I don't have any experience hitting pan on the more pressed glitter metallics, but I'm definitely looking forward to using this shade. It is beautiful, and this palette is just dreamy, isn't it? So I'm really thrilled about this. And so finally, I will be rolling in my 6th shade. I get to select what my 6th shade will be because I did hit pan on my Focus Shadow Sunset, which was my hand-selected pick from just my last update. So I get to choose what I'm going to add to this color story. How am I going to amp this up? Now, I have a few ideas floating through my head. It was kind of dependent on what direction the randomized selections went in, and I don't know if I'm gonna make the best decision here, and that is a Focus Shadow from this palette right here, my Melt Cosmetics Gemini. This is where my heart is at, is like these warm neutrals and these beautiful greens. So I wanna just dive into this palette and focus on something that I feel like I'm relatively close to already hitting pan on, and I think I just need that final push to make it happen. And I don't think this is gonna take me very long to do so. So this is the shade Fire OG. I wanna focus on this shade right here. Beautiful army green kind of tone. And this will just give me permission, I suppose, or the push to reach for this palette even more because I love it and I just love reaching into this palette. Every single time I use it, I just feel like my looks look bomb. And I think it'll pair really well with that shade Allure right there. So I could kind of pan that look, I think, for a little bit or figure out new ways to pair those two shades. But here is what Fire OG looks like. Oh my gosh, it's like a matte olive kind of tone and it just blends for forever. It's just rich and creamy and it's just a beautiful grungy kind of tone that I think is just going to really play well with specifically Allure, but it gives me the opportunity to create more green looks in the coming month as well. I don't imagine this requiring too much effort, but I just think I need this push to make that happen and I want to reach for this palette more. So I'm really excited about that 6th roll-in. It's quite possible I will have a pan on that for my next update to share with you, which is super, super exciting because realistically, I think I may be able to have pan on Pepper and possibly Fire OG next update, and that might be the extent of pans, but that's okay. I feel like I've been making really great progress over the course of this year with this project pan. My eyeshadow palettes look really well loved, and I'm feeling really happy about reaching into my palettes. I've been really enjoying the combinations of shades that I've been pairing together and just playing with. I am really excited to see what kind of looks I can create in the coming month. I hope that you're excited too, because I will of course share those on the screen in my next update. Let me know which shades you think I may be able to hit pan on for the coming month. But yeah, be sure to check out Alexi. She will be linked down in the description box. She's the creator of this project. I always have her linked in these updates. But yeah, that is everything for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.